Okay, picture this for a second. You're walking through a city, right? And the pressure to conform, it isn't just like a subtle nudge. It is absolutely suffocating. Political loyalty is being shouted from every corner. Virtue signaling is basically the currency and your public image. Well, that's everything. It's a place where worldviews are constantly clashing, status is all about performance, and if you show any weakness, you're committing social suicide.
Wow. I mean, you could be describing a walk through D.C. right now, or, the corporate world in London or New York. That feels incredibly current.
It really does. But we're not talking about today. We're actually in first century Philippi. And today we're unpacking this really fascinating sermon called Apprentices in Action. It's by Pastor Florin, part of the Unshakable series from Agape Community Church.
And this isn't just, a quick skim of the message. We have the sermon itself, but we also got our hands on the pastor's raw research notes.
That's the good stuff.
It is like a backstage pass to this history, the Greek words, all the stuff that didn't even make it into the final sermon.
I love digging into the raw notes. It's like finding the deleted scenes that explain the whole movie. So our mission today is pretty specific. What does it actually mean to live a kingdom life when your culture is demanding your loyalty to, well, everything else?
Politics, tech, individualism. Yeah.
And the strange thing is, our guide for this isn't some complex theological argument. It's a character study of two guys.
Two, regular guys.
Yeah.
Timothy and Epaphroditus.
Yeah. I love that. I love that Paul, who's writing this letter, just hits pause on all his heavy cosmic theology to talk about his friends. It feels, really human. Why do you think he does that?
Well, to get the why, we first have to understand the pressure cooker they were living in. You described the atmosphere, but the research notes, they get really specific. They call Philippi a mini-Rome.
A mini-Rome. Okay, unpack that.
So historically, Philippi was a Roman colony. Its official name was Colonia Augusta Aemilia Philippensis. And it was filled with retired Roman soldiers. Yeah, so just imagine a town full of veterans who are intensely, fiercely loyal to the empire. The notes even say the city was designed to look and feel just like Rome. The laws, the buildings, everything. It was all about projecting Roman power.
So you're constantly being reminded of who's in charge.
Constantly. You're seeing statues of Caesar everywhere. You're hearing Latin. If you're a Christian there, you're not just a religious minority. You're like a cultural weirdo. You are swimming upstream against a very, very strong current.
Okay, so that brings up something from the research notes. A scholar named Michael Lamb talks about a kaleidoscopic reading of this letter. It sounds a little academic, but what's he getting at?
It's a great term, actually. Lamb is basically arguing that Paul isn't just writing theology in a vacuum. He's writing what you could call cultural resistance.
Resistance to the Roman way of life.
Exactly. I mean, think about the Roman values. Power, status, dominance. The ultimate creed was Caesar is Lord. But Paul comes in with these kingdom values, humility, service, and the counter creed that Jesus is Lord. It's a direct clash of allegiances.
And the pastor drew a really strong line from that to our world today. We don't have Caesar, maybe, but we have our own pressure cooker of nationalism, consumerism, and what he called toxic identities.
Right. Our worth comes from who we voted for, or the brand of our phone, or how perfect our life looks on Instagram. We're always being pressured to bow to these modern Caesars. But this is where we have to get this foundational idea straight. The notes point to Matthew 6.33. Seek first the kingdom of God.
Yeah, we hear that verse a lot. It's on mugs and stuff. But what does it mean in this specific context?
It means that when you follow Jesus, you're not just adopted into a new family. You're adopted into a new nation. The kingdom of God is a real nation. It has its own heritage, its own distinct culture.
That's a huge shift in perspective. So you're saying our primary citizenship actually changes, like we're giving up one passport for another.
That's it, exactly. And Jesus says, seek this nation first, because everything else flows from that allegiance. And that's why Paul holds up these two guys, Timothy and Epaphroditus, and basically says, look, this is what a citizen of the kingdom looks like. This is the model.
Okay, so let's start with Timothy. He's the first example in Philippians chapter 2. And Paul writes something about him that it's actually kind of shocking when you really stop and think about it. He says, I have no one else like him.
Yeah, at first glance, it just sounds like a nice compliment, right? Oh, Timothy's a great guy. But it's a devastating critique of everybody else.
Right, because the next line is, everyone else looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. The pastor called this Timothy's unicorn quality.
It's such a stark observation. I mean, Paul is surrounded by people, other Christians, presumably, and yet he says Timothy is the only one who genuinely cares. In a world of self-promotion, both Roman and modern, that is radical.
The key word there has to be genuine. It's not transactional. It's not, I'll do this for you so you'll owe me one.
It's not networking, no. And the research notes really dig into the relationship. Paul says Timothy served with him as a son with a father. And that right there defines this whole idea of apprenticeship.
You know, when I hear apprentice, I think of like a trade school, an electrician or a corporate intern who gets coffee for everyone.
And that's totally the wrong mental image. For them, it was so much more organic. It was in a classroom. Timothy wasn't just sitting in a lecture hall listening to Paul. It was life on life.
They traveled together, ate together, probably got thrown in prison together a few times.
For sure. Apprenticeship is relational. It forms your character because you're watching the master up close. You see how they handle stress, how they deal with conflict. You can't learn that from a book.
In his notes, the pastor calls this the Agape practice. He says mentorship isn't about being some guru on a mountain. It's about inviting someone into your actual messy life. Coffee shops, late-night texts, sharing tears.
And there's a phrase from the sermon, we become who we walk with. That's the whole thing. If you want to know why Timothy was different, why he had that unicorn quality, it's because he spent years walking with Paul, who was walking with Jesus. It was a transfer of a way of life, not just information.
That's such a crucial distinction. We think if we just listen to enough podcasts or read enough books, we'll be transformed. But Timothy shows us we need proximity. Okay, so Timothy is the apprentice of faith, the learner. Let's shift to the second guy, Epaphroditus. I have to say, I love this guy's story.
He's a fascinating character, really the unsung hero of this whole letter.
Paul gives him this incredible stack of titles. Brother, co-worker, fellow soldier, messenger. Sounds like a general's resume or something.
It does, but the context is where it gets really subversive. The sermon notes use this illustration of the Super Bowl to help us get it.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it.
I mean, think about who our world celebrates. The Super Bowl stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
We celebrate strength, fame, glory. The winners, the camera is on the star quarterback, not the guy filling the water bottles.
Right. And then you have Epaphroditus. He's not scoring the winning touchdown. He's the guy who got sick delivering a care package.
He almost died. He travels 800 miles to bring support to Paul in prison, and he gets a life-threatening illness for his trouble. The Roman world would look at that and say, what a failure, he's weak. But Paul looks at him and says, no, honor men like this.
There were two Greek words in the research notes that totally blew my mind and changed how I see this guy. I want to drill down on these. The first one is from that phrase, risking his life.
Yes. The word is paraboliomai.
Paraboliomai. Okay, and the notes say that's a gambling term.
It is. It literally means to throw the dice, to stake everything on a single roll. It was used for people who exposed themselves to danger with, like, a reckless disregard for their own safety.
So was he being reckless? That doesn't sound very wise.
Well, not reckless in a foolish way. It was more like he was placing a holy wager. He was betting everything, his safety, his health, on the faithfulness of God. He knew the journey was dangerous, but he rolled the dice anyway to serve Paul.
I love that. The holy gambler. It just pushes back so hard against this idea that faith is always about playing it safe.
Completely. We think faith equals security. But this word, paraboliomai, implies faith sometimes looks like a high-stakes risk. It's putting all your chips on the table for Jesus.
And then there's the second word, which redefines what he was even doing. Paul calls his service a liturgia.
Right, which is where we get our word liturgy. We think of, a church service.
Fiddles and hymns, yeah.
But back then, liturgy was a civic term. It referred to public service done by the super wealthy.
Break that down for me.
If you were a rich guy in Philippi, you'd fund a worship for the Navy or pay for a massive public festival. That was your liturgy. It was kind of a voluntary tax, but it bought you massive public honor. It was how you proved you were a big deal.
So it's like writing a huge check for the new stadium so they put your name on the building?
Exactly. It was a power move, purely for show. But look at what Paul does. He takes this high-status aristocratic word and applies it to Epaphroditus, who's doing what?
He's bringing a gift and taking care of a prisoner.
He's visiting a guy in chains, doing the grunt work, cleaning wounds, bringing food. Paul just completely flips the script. He says this humble, risky, draining service This is the true liturgia. This is the real public service of the kingdom.
That is the alternative honor culture the pastor was talking about. It just inverts the whole social pyramid.
It does. Rome honored dominance. The kingdom honors sacrifice. Rome honored the guy who funded the worship. The kingdom honors the guy who risked his health for a friend.
So the so what question here. Paul includes these little biographies to basically reframe success for the Philippians and for us.
Totally. He wants us to look at our own definitions of success. We're conditioned to admire ability, talent, charisma, the person on the stage. But the notes really emphasize that Epaphroditus didn't succeed because he was talented. He wasn't a great speaker like Paul. He succeeded because he was available.
That's a quote I wrote down from the sermon. The kingdom does not advance through perfect people. It advances through available people.
It's so liberating, isn't it? You don't need a PhD. You don't need to be an extrovert or have a huge platform. You just have to be willing to say yes to the risk of loving someone, even when it's inconvenient.
So let's bring this down to the pavement. How do we actually apply this? If you're listening to this on your commute, what do? The sermon had some next steps.
Yeah, it breaks down into two lanes, really. First, for the Timothys.
The learners.
Yeah.
The ones who know they need guidance.
Right. If that's you, the challenge is to find a mentor. And not just listen to a podcast. No offense to us.
Huh. None taken?
Mm-hmm.
We're great, but we're not a relationship.
Exactly. You need a real person who's pouring into you. The pastor mentioned apprenticeship pairs, which is just a mature believer walking with a newer one.
Mm-hmm.
It requires you to be vulnerable and ask for help, which, scary.
It is. It means admitting you don't have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about for the Epaphroditus?
The challenge there is to take a risk. Step out of your comfort zone. Maybe God's calling you to serve in a way that feels like a bit of a gamble. It might cost you time. It might be awkward. It might be emotionally draining.
But that's the liturgia. That's the real service.
That is the service. It's moving from being a Sunday spectator to a lifestyle apprentice.
The pastor asked that question, and it's a tough one. Are you a Sunday spectator or a lifestyle apprentice?
A spectator just watches the show. They critique the music, the sermon. An apprentice is in the workshop getting their hands dirty, making mistakes, but learning the craft. Real discipleship requires proximity. You have to get close enough to get dusty.
Thinking about all this, the gambling, the risk, the inverted honor, it makes me think about how our culture defines risk.
Mm-hmm.
We think of skydiving or a volatile stock investment.
Sure. High adrenaline stuff, the kind of thing that makes for a good Instagram post.
But in the kingdom economy, maybe the greatest risk is just vulnerability.
That's a deep thought. Go on.
Well, Epaphroditus risked his health, yeah, but he also risked his status. He was doing menial work. He risked being associated with a state prisoner.
Yeah.
It's the risk of loving other people so much that we inconvenience ourselves, maybe even to the point of suffering. That doesn't get you a trophy in this world.
But it gets you the commendation of God, and that's the only one that lasts. I mean, think about it. When the Roman Empire crumbled, all those statues of the guys who funded warships, they're just dust now. Nobody knows their names. But here we are, 2,000 years later, still talking about Epaphroditus.
That's unshakable.
Truly, his gamble paid off for eternity. And that's the invitation for all of us. Whether you're new to this or you've been a Christian for decades, the call is the same. Join the apprenticeship.
Well, we want to thank you for making the time to go on this deep dive with us. It's heavy stuff, but it's really good stuff.
Absolutely. And listen, if you want to see the source material in action, we really would encourage you to check out the Agape Community Church YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's growing. You can watch the full sermon there and see the community that's trying to live this out.
Yeah.
It's one thing to hear us talk about it, but another to see the pastor lay it all out.
Definitely worth the click.
Thanks for listening. Go take a holy risk today.
See you next time.